this practice that we do has its purpose, as we mentioned yesterday, to really become immersed in the universal energy and silence that we are. And this is what a teacher is for. I was with my teacher Rudi. I mean, I don't think there was anything he could have asked for that I wouldn't give and do. And you might say, well, that's stupid. But, you know, it was my connection with that energy field. And I had so much value for it, and I related to him as the gateway into that state in myself. And I experienced it. When I was with him and I used the practice that he had given me, then all of a sudden, bang, you know, a lot of ice melted and I had a lot more flow in my system, and I really got in touch. I had this awakening of, I just am this deeper state, you know, of silence and unlimited potential, and just the gratitude for the flow of love that was there. There was nothing in him that was judging me, or, you know, there was no limit to what he invited to participate in. So when we have this open eyes class, we are participating in that field of energy, this energy field, which represents the universal field, because these guys have worked for years and years and years inside to be in touch with that. So when they sit down and look at you, then, you know, you have to trust that there's something there that can awaken the same thing in you. The trick is to be able to look at it with the kind of attitude that makes you penetrate into the deepest part of yourself and the deepest part of everything you encounter. And this is what Tantrism means. Tantric means a method to penetrate into that which lies beyond. Yeah. That's the deepest thing in us. So use this connection. Rudi, my teacher, he never demanded to be worshipped, you know, as some people kind of project that, oh, I'm way up here and you guys are way down there. He was extremely human at the same time as he was living in a way above himself. You know, he had risen into awareness of that universal state. And that was very clear. And then, you know, all the things that he was on a human level, I and many others, we just didn't attach to that. He had respect for the Oriental tradition and the recognition that he received in the Orient, but he did not try to be Indian. And this is also a reason that I feel at this point, you know, that I want to be a presence in such a way that it is as palatable, as edible as possible for people. I don't want to create this Indian thing as a barrier. It's not that you put yourself up. That's not what rising means. Rising means being above your ego, but it doesn't mean that you project an expectation that people should worship you. No. It means that, you know, you are inviting a gateway into their own deeper state. The teacher can help remove some of the darkness that stands in the way, because he or she has worked enough in contact with a living representation of this force to have gone through that, him or herself. So then, you know, you can use the connection as a gateway. And this is an important distinction. You have a very good, I don't know him personally, but I've read some of his books. A person here in Denmark named Jes Bertelsen.
Yeah, yeah.
He has a Vext center in Jylland.
Yeah.
And he comes from a Buddhist tradition, and he has described this very nicely, you know, that there's a tendency in the West, or in the East even more maybe, but there's a tendency when you have a teacher to kind of sit down next to that teacher and be mostly focused on decorating the doorway. You know, all kinds of, oh, that doorway is so great, what a great, oh, I want to be like him or her. But this is not the appropriate thing, then you never get through the doorway. And he makes that very clear, that the use of a teacher is to enter through that doorway yourself, to share in that field of energy, which you have gotten glimpses of here, you know? And then the purpose is to gradually immerse yourself more and more in that. So the whole point of having a connection is to have a contact point. This is what a teacher can represent, a contact point for you, a reminder and support, but also challenge sometimes at the appropriate times. You know, it's challenging to suddenly face that deeper field that is represented. It's hot, it burns, it invites you to burn up the obstacles, remove the darkness, let that deeper energy really shine forth. And I had experiences with Rudi which were extremely difficult in a way, because, I mean, I spent 3.5 years with him, and I was, after some initial experiences of really having this awakening take place, I felt, as I mentioned yesterday, much more open, energy flowing, gratitude. I felt much more love in my life and more openness. But then at a certain point, I don't know, maybe after a year and a half, I started to kind of coast. I felt good about that, and I said, oh, hey, I'm feeling good, it's fine. And then one day I was in Open Eyes class with Rudi. He sometimes worked with some of us upstairs in the living room after the regular program, and it was always even a little more intense up there. So he was working with me and others, and I thought, working real hard, but you know, there was something there that he wanted to let me know at that time. And, you know, and he did what's called Shaktipat, the touch your forehead, and, you know, and I fell back. But in retrospect, when I think about it, it was, at that moment, it was kind of a habit, you know, okay, you get energy and you fall back kind of thing, and you receive it. But I was a little bit like a spoiled child, you know, wanting more food but not really digesting it. And he, of course, saw that very clearly, and he wanted to teach me a lesson, and he said, leave the house. What? And I went to my little space that I had in the ashram there, and I sat and I was just terrified. I thought, wow, Jesus, you know, I had put my whole life into this work and the connection with him, and I thought, wow, what is he going to do? Is he throwing me out? Is he cutting the connection? And I worked and worked and worked and worked inside all day long. I couldn't go to work. And then at the end of the day, maybe it was 4 or 5 o'clock, when he was about to close his shop. He had an Oriental art store, and he sat in that store. Usually there were a lot of people coming and going there. But I walked in and I was really worried. But I was also at the same time open. I went in there and I said, okay, whatever this is supposed to teach me, I will try to learn it and open to it, even if the worst happens. So I went in an open state, and he could see that I had worked all day. And I walked in, and you know, he's big and heavy, and he gives me a big hug, he rolls me around on his stomach, you know, and I could feel the energy really moving. And I said, oh, I was so afraid that you would kick me out. I guess I was taking you for granted, I said. And he said, yes, that's why I did what I did for you. and he said, I love you too much for that. You know? So he accepted that limitation in me, and he physically and psychically embraced that limitation, and that darkness disappeared. You know? And it was like, oh, I was lifted into a whole other level of awareness and appreciation for him, what he was really doing. You know? He was really aware and using every part of his life as a way of transforming obstacles into a transcendent experience. It was impressive to observe him, not just in class, but in his everyday life. He really used this connection with that energy and allowed that to guide him. I mean, I remember we were doing seva, which is selfless service, you know, on the buildings. He was developing some buildings, and he said, maybe you can help out for a few days. I was a college student and I had the time to do it. And so I was working there all day, together with 4 other people, I think it was, and we were, at the end of the day, we had done a lot of spackling and painting and that kind of basic work on this building. And the last thing that was supposed to happen that day was we were installing a huge pre-made stairway in wood. Yeah? So this thing is delivered, and 4 or 5 of us are standing there, and we are working on this for at least an hour, maybe 2 hours, trying to make it fit into this space. And it is just 2 centimeters too long. I mean, there's no way around it. It's too long. We cannot get in there. And the main guy, kind of the leader of our little team trying to do this work, at one time he said, no, we give up. The thing is too long. It doesn't fit. And at exactly that moment, Rudi comes around from his store, walking over towards, you know, to clean up a little bit for class. So he heard this comment, and he says, don't you ever say it's not possible. And he jumps into the air, and he lands on the bottom step of that stairway, and miraculously enough, it falls into place. And our jaw just falls. You know, we felt like total fools, you know, we've been struggling for 2 hours, and this heavy man comes and shoves it in place. And this is how he was. Don't accept a no. Go into the deeper place and find a way to do it. So, many, many examples of that.